Welcome to this first part of a two-part series on requirements engineering. Now, prior to getting into requirements engineering, we want to remember that the planning phase of the system development lifecycle ends in a report to management, ultimately something that decision makers will assess to determine whether or not we're going to continue on developing an information system. So, presuming that the planning phase of the development lifecycle has yielded some sort of approval to continue on forward, we're then moving into the analysis phase. And so, in the analysis phase, we're going to really kind of focus on understanding the business's problems, and what the requirements actually are for developing this new or improving an existing system. Requirements engineering starts with a sense of kind of two different things. One, understanding the past. And when we say current system on this graphic here, this can be a current quote unquote information system or more of kind of a manual system. It doesn't have any implication of technology here, but it's kind of understanding how the business has been operating, as well as how the business wants to operate given that a new system is developed and implemented. And so with requirements engineering, we have several different components to it. This includes modeling requirements, that is, both getting diagrams that describe how the business operates and actual descriptions about many of the things that they do. While this is happening, we're also modeling out the sorts of inputs and outputs they need for processes. We're maybe doing object modeling depending on the nature of the process that the development team is going to take. And then from this, developing strategies. That is, how we're going to continue on in terms of designing the components for the system, which is going to be the next phase of the system development lifecycle. But for here, to get kind of the best understanding of the initial activities in the analysis phase, requirements techniques. Here's different techniques that can be employed to, again, understand what the business does and what needs they have for this improvement to existing systems or developing an entirely new information system. While there are loads of different types of techniques to gather requirements, some of the most common are interviewing, that is, actually going out and having conversations with folks, document review, which has to do with looking at the sorts of reports and forms and other historical documentation that the organization uses throughout their business processes. Observation, where we're actually observing people in their roles and making notes, gathering information that way. Questionnaires and surveys, which tend to be a lot like interviews, but more of a written form. There are some additional kind of implications with that, but we're not going to go into that in this or in the next video. Brainstorming, which is where we bring multiple folks together to help, well, brainstorm different requirements for this new or improved system. And then there's research, which is looking at industry and how other folks have solved similar problems or have responded to similar systems requests. Now, again, these are not an exhaustive list of these techniques, nor is to say that we only use one of these techniques when we're gathering requirements. In fact, usually a combination of techniques is going to yield the best and most insightful set of requirements so we can continue on in designing the information system. In our next video, I want to focus on primarily interviewing because, one, this is one of the most common techniques, but two, it also kind of sets a tone and provide some understanding that we can employ in additional techniques. So, for example, learning about how to conduct good interviews can help give some insight into how to design good surveys. It can provide some insight as to the sorts of things that we want to look for when we make observations, or even the sorts of things that we might want to ensure we've gathered information on when we are conducting brainstorming sessions. So in our next video, we'll focus on interviews, but again, these have implications for all sorts of techniques.